Apologies for delaying the Press Gallery AGM. My government, as you know, is relentlessly focused on getting New Zealand back on track. And as issues change in prominence, I plan to adjust ministerial responsibilities to make sure that we are best set up to deliver for New Zealanders. So today I'm announcing that Paul Goldsmith will take on the responsibility for the media and communications portfolio, while Louise Upston will pick up the disability issues portfolio. It has become clear in recent months that there are significant challenges in the media sector, as you will well appreciate. Similarly, we have discovered that there are major issues with the financial management of programs run by Whaikaha, the Ministry of Disabled Peoples. And I have therefore come to the view that it is important to have senior cabinet ministers considering both of these issues. There are significant synergies between the Arts, Culture and Heritage portfolio, which has responsibility for New Zealand on air and also the New Zealand Film Commission, and the Media and Communications portfolio. And as such, I've asked Paul Goldsmith to take the lead on media issues for the government. The challenges facing our media are being seen all over the world, and while there are limited levers that the government can pull, I look forward to Paul progressing work to ensure regulatory settings are appropriate to enable the media and individual media companies to modernise and adapt to what is a changing media environment. And with regard to the Ministry of Disabled People, this is a departmental agency within the Ministry of Social Development, and so I've asked Louise Upston to take responsibility for the disability issues portfolio. This will therefore free Penny Simmons up to focus on the environment portfolio, and in particular the major changes that she is progressing to improve tertiary education. Given the changes, Melissa Lee will move outside of Cabinet, Climate Change and Revenue Minister Simon Watts will move into Cabinet, and I have advised the Governor-General to give effect to the changes immediately today. And with that, I'm happy to take questions. Sorry, Mikey.
Why did Melissa Lee not do a good enough job? Why is she gone?
Well, look, this is really about making sure we have the right people on the right assignment at the right time. And in both these cases of both of these portfolios, there have been significant changes and complexities added to them over the course of since when the ministers were allocated these responsibilities. I want to make sure I've got senior ministers dealing with these issues. There's a lot more complexity that's emerged in these portfolios.
Lee has been an MP for 16 years. How is it that she is not able to do this job, though?
Well, Melissa Lee is a good, hard-working minister, and she's doing an exceptionally good job on Minister of Ethnic Communities and also Economic Development, and she'll continue to do so, as will Penny Simmons.
Pretty unusual to have economic development sitting outside of Cabinet, isn't it?
Well, what I'd say to you is be under no illusions. Every single minister in our government is focused on the economy from myself down. When you think about the senior ministers we have with major economic portfolio responsibilities, I think there's no doubt that we are ruthlessly focused on rebuilding the economy and good economic management and development's at the heart of everything we're doing in this government.
You've been pretty clear that you've been doing regular check-ins and performance reviews with your ministers.
Yes.
Have these conversations and these demotions come out of that, or have you realised because of the negative headlines and the commentary that's going on, have you taken a separate step out of sync of all of that and decided to make this decision?
Look, on both these, I talk to my ministers all the time, check in, see how they're going, and that's a regular, dynamic and conversation that I've started from the beginning. And in this case, we've talked about the issues in these respective portfolios with both the ministers.
Sorry, guys,
we'll just go one at a time.
Can I
Jason?
just clarify that? So you pulled them in and they did not have good enough answers to the questions that you had?
I have ongoing conversations with all my ministers, checking in on the content and also how they personally are travelling, and that's been an ongoing habit of mine from the beginning.
Could you just walk us through what exactly it is that Melissa Lee has done wrong to warrant such a demotion?
Well, it's actually just fundamentally take a step back. What it is recognising that there has been a significant change in the media environment. You have experienced and seen it. It's moved quicker, faster, sooner, and as a result, I want to make sure that there is a good senior cabinet minister responsibility around media issues.
You've been in government for about 6 months or so. It kind of moved. I mean, given there has been quite a lot of movement in the media industry over that time, what exactly is it? Can you pinpoint a moment or a series of decisions that she made?
It's about the fact that the complexity inherently in the task and the assignment on the portfolio issues has changed, right? It's got much more complex. The same has happened on disability issues as well in terms of the financial management that we've seen and the struggles with the cost overruns, and likewise the big review that we're undergoing. It makes sense for me to be able to say, look, those are changes to those portfolios, and as a result, I'm just a person who will constantly make adjustments to those portfolios and the leadership of them when the situation changes. Sorry, Claire.
Prime Minister, had it been made
Sorry,
clear-
sorry, Mary, I'll get to you, Claire.
What do you anticipate that Paul Goldsmith will be able to do that Melissa Lee wasn't looking at?
Well-
Had she actually taken a paper to Cabinet?
Again, what Paul Goldsmith will do is take stock. He has components of the media and communications portfolio. If you think about local content creation, particularly under New Zealand On Air and the New Zealand Film Commission, there's an obvious synergy sitting there. In the same way with Louise Upston, with a Ministry for Disability Issues being an agency of MSD, there's good alignment, good synergies there as well. I want to make sure I've got good senior cabinet ministers dealing with both those issues, given that there have been changes to the complexity of those portfolios. Sorry, Amelia.
Has it been made clear to you that the media industry had lost trust in Melissa Lee?
No, that wasn't the case at all. What the issue again for me is just acknowledging that they are two portfolios where there have been significant changes and innately more complex since the ministers were allocated their initial responsibilities.
Had both of the performances of those ministers become a distraction? Is that why they're out?
No, the reason why we're having this change is because these portfolios have evolved and they have become more complex as a result. If you think about disability issues, when we first assigned that to Penny, what you've seen is actually a habit now of actually big cost overruns over a budget, poor financial management, and that's why we're putting a big review in place to make sure that we get better management of disabilities issues going forward. With respect to the media environment, as you've all seen, we've known there's been changes to the media environment for some time and it's coming, but it came pretty fast and pretty soon. And so as a result, I'm just one of those people, and I've done it in my former life. I will make constant adjustments to my team to make sure I've got the right people on the right assignment at the right time. And what I want is more senior cabinet minister responsibility for those two portfolios.
Before Melissa Lee, she's not just been an MP for 16 years, so she's not just lost her portfolio, but she's been booted out of Cabinet. This is a total humiliation for her. What has she done to warrant this?
Well, Melissa Lee is a hard-working, good minister. She's done an incredibly good job as a Minister of Ethnic Communities, for example. She's done a phenomenal job with that, and she's doing a good job on economic development, and will continue to do so.
What did she do to warrant this reaction from you?
Again, it's about the fact that I assess the complexity of the respective portfolios. I make an assessment, have I got the right people on the right challenge at the right time? And in this case, as I said to you, there's innately more complexity in the media environment, innately more complexity in the management of disability issues, and I want to make sure I've got senior ministers there.
She's out of Cabinet. That is humiliating for her. You've booted her out of Cabinet.
Well, that is just a
Why?
function of a workload of the minister. The recognition that there is a lower workload, and as a result, it doesn't warrant being in Cabinet. That doesn't preclude Melissa from making it back into Cabinet at some future point either, frankly.
How much of a factor was the paper that she brought to Cabinet Committee on the 8th of April?
It's not about that. It genuinely is about the fact that there is innately more complexity. And if you're sitting in my position, leading a leadership team, if you think about what I've tried to do about the casting of ministers and the responsibilities that they have, I want to make sure each and every one of those ministers is working well, that they're feeling supported, that they're getting through the work well, and I want to make sure I've got the right people on the right assignment. So that's what it's been about.
On that day, you specifically, as someone who sits on that Cabinet Committee, you told her that that work was not up to scratch and you sent her back to the drawing board. Was that the final straw for you?
Again, it's not about that. It's about the complexity that's innately in these issues. And you're going to see me continue to do this. This is how I roll. This is how I lead. I make constant assessments. As you know, I'm in constant dialogue with my ministers. We talk about their performance. We talk about their support. We talk about the progress. We talk about the content of their issues. And in this case, I've spoken with both ministers about that over several weeks and months, as I've been doing, and I've assessed that actually in both these cases the agenda has moved on, got much more complex, and we actually need more senior representation. Sorry?
Is this a warning shot to your caucus? Because if they're not up to complexities or challenges, which politics sees all the time, that they are going to lose their role?
Well, what you can see is I'm just a person who will adapt very quickly and dynamically to changing circumstances and situations. I want to make sure every single one of my team, and I think I have an outstanding team, I think I have a very strong team, and we've got a very strong set of ministers. I want to make sure that they are actually really on point, that they're actually getting the support that they need, that where there's difficulties, we're supporting them, but importantly, I've got the right people on the right assignments at the right time. And so I appreciate it may not be the way things have have been done in the past here, but expect this to happen going forward as well.
Melissa Lee had been
Sorry, here, I'll just come back to you,
Melissa
Mikey.
Lee,
Katie?
you mentioned the word
Sorry, Mikey, I'll come back. Sorry, Katie?
Melissa Lee had been opposition spokesperson for broadcasting for 6 years. How was she not, and during that period, for example, during COVID-19, there were entire magazine publications that shut down. How was she not prepared for the complex situation that the media sector finds itself in now?
Well, look, I mean, as you've seen in the last 2 months, it's moved incredibly fast here in New Zealand. There's no doubt about there's been structural challenges across media globally, and I actually think there are quite limited levers that government can deploy in this circumstance. But what we can do is make sure we've got those settings right so that individual media companies can evolve and adapt as they need to those circumstances. So it's just an assessment that I'm making to say, hey, listen, 6 months into the job, almost 150 days into the job, I'm going through my ministers and saying, right, have we got the right people on the right assignments? And I just judge that given the increased complexity, I need more senior cabinet representation. Sorry, can I go to Audrey?
She has claimed to really understand the issues, though. And
Sorry?
Melissa Lee has claimed to understand the sector, to understand the issues that are facing it. So was she wrong to say that?
Well, again, my assessment is that the issues are complex and I want senior cabinet ministers being responsible for those issues. Sorry, Audrey.
Yeah, when did they get an inkling that they might lose their jobs, and did you consult Winston Peters and David Seymour?
Yeah, I mean, I've had ongoing conversations with ministers, as I said, with all ministers. That's the way I kind of operate. I've had a series of conversations with both ministers over the last month or so on their respective portfolios. We had the conversations this morning. I also informed Winston and Peters and also David Seymour. This is my decision, but I wanted to make sure that they were on board and they were on board and aligned with what we're doing. Sorry, Ben.
Just following on from that.
Sorry?
Just following on from that, the MPs you're moving out are all National Party MPs. Would you have had the authority to do this if they were from the minor parties?
I'm the Prime Minister and I determine ultimately who the performance of my cabinet ministers.
So ask, with this shift to Paul Goldsmith, is this likely to trigger any sort of change in the government's position on the Fair News Digital Bargaining Bill, which has broad support from the industry, but previously the National Party has been negative sounding on it?
Well, look, again, in fairness to Paul, he needs some time just to get around those issues. But that's what I'm wanting us to understand is what is it as a government that we can do to enable, acknowledging that we don't have big levers to play here, but what we do have is some ability to...
Softening on it?
Sorry?
Is your stance softening on that?
As I've said, we're going to let that go through. Obviously, there's a discussion happening in the Select Committee, and once that's digested, we'll make our own independent mind up on that.
Just back to Audrey's questions before. Did either or both of your coalition partners raise any issues with you about either or both of those ministers that you had promoted ahead of time?
No.
So just to ask, do you think up until the complexities that you're describing in the media sector hit, that Melissa Lee was doing a good job as Minister?
Well, what I acknowledge is that the complexity in the portfolio has changed from when those assignments were first allocated. You are going to see me, and I'm sorry it may be a different way of working, but I am going to change and I'll continue to do so.
Before the complexities evolve, which you've just talked about, and yep, get all of that, do you think that Melissa Lee was doing a good job as Media and Communications Minister up until the point the complexities...
I think Melissa Lee is a good, hard-working minister and a valuable member of our team. Felix, go to Felix, sorry.
Prime Minister, you have gone out of your way just before to say Melissa Lee has performed really well in ethnic communities and economic development. Notably, you haven't said she's done well as Media and Communications Minister. How do you rate her performance in that role?
Well, again, what this is about is me sitting as Prime Minister, looking across my team and saying, have I got the right people on the right assignments at this point in time? And my assessment is, in both these cases, on disability and on media and communications, I want to make a change and I want to make sure that I've got senior cabinet ministers with those responsibilities. It's as simple as it gets.
That's looking ahead though, and how do you rate her performance in that role to date?
Well, I'll just say to you, she's a good, hard-working minister who makes a good contribution to our team. Mikey?
Why should the public have confidence in either of those two remaining on as ministers?
Oh, because they're very good, hard-working ministers. If I look at the work that Melissa Lee has done around ethnic communities, economic development, if I think about the work that Penny Simmons is doing, picking up a hell of a mess from Chris Hipkins and the Labor government on tertiary education, there's a massive reform program that's needed in that space, and likewise around managing environment.
Simmons, you're right, she does have a big job in terms of that tertiary portfolio.
Is she up to that?
Absolutely. She comes from the
Say
sector,
that
she
she's not
understands
up
the
to
sector,
issues
she
around
understands the
disability.
sector, and she's working incredibly hard at it, and it's a hell of a mess, as I said, to pick up.
In
Do
terms
you
of the
do you
conversation,
appreciate, though, that some people in the public might question whether they do have the capability in order to perform those jobs?
Look, this is
because
just
they clearly
simply
don't have
about
the
me.
portfolios, you've just kicked them
Yeah,
out.
but I just say to you, look, this is simply about me looking across my team. I want to make sure I've got all my aces in their places, that people are really contributing. I want to make sure that every minister is actually powered up, ready to go, doing a good job on their portfolios. And when I look at the complexity that has lifted in both of these portfolios, the reality is I want senior cabinet ministers taking over those responsibilities.
in terms of how all this played out, did at any point Melissa Lee or Penny Simmons come to you and say, this workload is too much, I can't manage this, could you please shuffle me around? Or was it your executive decision to say, you're moving, that's the end of it?
Look, we have ongoing conversations through the course of the last few weeks and months about portfolios, as I keep saying I do with all my ministers. Ultimately, this was my decision.
Did they initiate conversations saying that it was too much for them to handle?
No, this was my decision.
What was their response to that decision? How did they take it?
Well, look, incredibly, I acknowledge, it's disappointing for certainly for Melissa. I get that and I understand that, and she played that back to me, and I fully understand. It's a tough day in that regard. But ultimately, they all know that they are good, hard-working ministers that I value. They've got a big contribution to make in the team with respect to their other portfolios, and they still have and they still have my full confidence.
Melissa Lee played that back to you.
Sorry?
You said Melissa Lee played that back to you, so she expressed.
Well, it's just understandable, right? I mean, I think if you were in the same position, and I appreciate, some of you have been going through a similar process, or a process of some sorts, you understand what we're talking about. It is disappointing, if you're the individual. But the reality is, they know that they are, really valued by our team. I have full confidence in them. They're doing a good job on their other portfolios. They'll continue to do so, and they've got good contributions to make.
What about for the disabled community?
Sorry,
Have the
Thomas.
coalition parties agreed on media policy going forward, or is it still a matter of negotiation?
Look, again, in fairness to Paul Goldsmith, I've tasked him and spoken with him this morning about what I expect him to get his issues around those issues, and he'll take that through a cabinet process.
So there's currently no agreement between the coalition parties, and Goldsmith has to find a way through?
No, I've just asked him to reset and actually come back to the team with his thoughts about how we could do our job, acknowledging that we've got some limited levers in the media space, but actually how we create the settings so that individual media companies can evolve and adapt and innovate as they need to.
Are parties at odds about what should be done in media policy?
No.
The disabled community who've really struggled with the funding changes, having them ripped away, then sort of drip-fed changes to the flexible funding. Can you give them any assurance that it'll be a smoother process, better communicated under the new management?
Well, that's why, as a new agency, that has actually hit cost overruns every single year, which is not acceptable. When we set a budget, we expect agencies to deliver within their budgets. As you know, we put more money in this year. We'll be putting more money into the budget, as you'll see at the end of May in this space as well. But I also expect there are two things that I'm focused on in that area. One is I want to make sure there is good financial discipline and control and management in place, because increasingly when you send more money into an area, I want to know it's been well managed and getting through to the disabled people who need it. And the second thing that, as you've seen, as part of actually putting those extra funds in, we do want a full review, and I think it's entirely appropriate given it's a new agency, and I think the right person to lead that work and do that work is Louise Upston as Minister of Social Development.
Just one more. And yep. What do you make of the optics that the first two people sacked by you were women?
Well, what I'd say is we have a very strong team, and we've got a very strong cadre of women at the heart of this government. And I just asked you to go look at the talent that is there with Nicola Willis and Louise Upston and Judith Collins and Erica Stanford, as well as Penny, and also with Melissa. So we've got a strong cadre of women at the heart of this government doing our big jobs, and I'm really excited and I'm very supportive of that.
Sorry,
last question, Glenn.
What was Penny Simmons' response to that? She had real-world experience in the disability space, surely she had a lot to offer there.
Oh, look, she understands that, that issue, as you saw with her own admission through the issues of the last few months, as well as those of the agency, she acknowledges, there's been challenges there, and she gets it, and she's very focused on making sure she sorts out tertiary education.
Was the issue that she knew back in December?
Sorry?
Was the issue that she knew about the funding issues back in December and didn't come to you to say anything?
Again, the only issue here is the way that I roll and the way that I lead teams, is I make sure that I have my people in the right places. I make sure that they have the right person on the right assignment at the right time, and that's all that's happening here, is that these portfolios have got more complex, and as a result I want senior cabinet ministers who have adjacent portfolio responsibilities that are linked to these portfolios taking responsibility for them going forward. Okay, team, thanks so much. Enjoy your AGM when you get there. Thank you.
Quickly get your reaction on the New Zealand Defence Force Gallipoli contingent having a smaller role to play at this ceremony due to their luggage, including their instruments.
Look, I haven't been briefed on that. I'll just say to everybody, have a great Anzac Day tomorrow, celebrate and commemorate well. Thank you.